A story a week, the mind's masterpiece, a work of art from heart to heart. Tales of wonder, wonder she inspires. Upon her canvas, worlds are built, hearts are healed, hopes restored, dreams revealed, puzzles solved, faiths take flight, good works are born. A story a week. Sit back and relish this week's story. The Nede Enigma, The Legacy. The tiger slowly rose, moaning as it moved, and padded ahead with deliberate calm, its massive paws sinking into the leafy earth. WooGi faltered, gripping his flashlight tightly as its beam wavered in his trembling hands. Was this a trap? "God guide me," he whispered, his voice almost lost amidst the jungle's haunting medley of chirps and rustling sounds. Fear made him glance over his shoulder repeatedly, as if unseen eyes were watching. The tiger paused at the edge of a dense thicket, turning its golden gaze on WooGi. It let out a low guttural growl that froze him in place. Then, with a single leap, it vanished into the foliage. WooGi's heart raced. Should he flee or wait? He weighed his options. The tiger had not attacked him, though it could have easily done so. Perhaps it sensed he meant no harm. Repeating the words, "Fear not," under his breath like a mantra, WooGi decided to follow. A faint silver shimmer caught his eye through the foliage. Parting the dense greenery, he stepped forward to discover a glimmering pool, its surface glowing like liquid silver under the pale moonlight. Tall trees formed a natural border around the clearing, their roots curling along the edges of the water, while the air was thick with the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers. There the tiger stood, wading into the pool, ripples forming as it moved, its golden eyes watching WooGi with quiet intensity. Was it inviting him to rest, to drink, or was it marking its territory? WooGi was unsure, his heart hammering in his chest. He could tell that was the tiger's territory, for it felt very at peace in the water. A strange tranquility enveloped the clearing. On the far side of the pool, something shone in the mud. Cautiously, he walked closer, aiming at it with his flashlight. A metallic object half buried in the earth. The tiger growled softly, but WooGi raised his trembling hands in a gesture of peace. "No trouble," he murmured, his voice shaking. He stooped and picked up the object. It was a compass, dirt clinging to its edges. It looked familiar. Recognition dawned on him. This looked like the compass he and his friend Ubel had used during their previous expeditions. Ubel had even brought it along for this trip. His breath skipped. Could this be a sign they're alive? Had they passed through this place? He whispered, clutching it to his chest. Overwhelmed, he sank to the ground, tears streaming down his face. Exhaustion overtook him and sleep claimed him despite the tiger's presence. The tiger, sensing his vulnerability, padded away into the jungle to hunt.
Through many dangerous toils and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me.
At dawn, WooGi awoke to the scent of wildflowers and the sight of the tiger resting by the water's edge. A wave of gratitude surged within him. He whispered a prayer of thanks to God for protection and guidance, and with newfound courage, he approached the tiger. "Thank you for sharing your space," he said softly, smiling. The tiger blinked in response, its massive form calm and unthreatening. "I have to go," WooGi said, his voice steady. "I need to find my friends and bring them home." With a final look, he said, "Goodbye." The tiger watched him leave, its eyes following him until he disappeared into the trees. As WooGi walked, he felt the weight of uncertainty again. Then he remembered he had slid the map into his pocket. He reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved the Nede Grove map. Using the compass, he oriented himself, but as he tried to sit, his foot struck something hard. Curious, he tapped the spot several times with his leg, and he bent down to push the leaves away and uncovered a rusted manhole cover. With determination, WooGi found a heavy stone and smashed the lock. After several attempts, the cover creaked open, revealing a dark hole. He bent down and called out the names of his friends. He heard his voice reverberate through the manhole. Then a faint voice answered. Tears welled up in WooGi's eyes. "That's Gwit. Are you okay?" "Please get me out of here," came the weak reply. "Oh God, what do I do?" All around him were vines. WooGi quickly fashioned a rope from nearby vines and lowered it into the hole, along with his flashlight. Gwit grabbed hold and WooGi pulled with all his strength. Finally, she emerged, exhausted and bruised. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Between gasps, she told him the tragic fate of their friends, Athe and Ubel, who had been sucked into the deadly vortex connected to the sinkhole. The vortex, it was so tight, so narrow, that even the slightest movement felt like being suffocated. Athe and Ubel were squeezed and their bodies contorted as they were forced into the narrowest space. The pressure was too much for them. It wasn't just the physical struggle. It was the crushing, suffocating feeling of being trapped, unable to move, unable to breathe. They were squeezed to death just like all the others, all those poor souls who ventured into the Nede Grove and never returned. They ended up in that tank, their bodies crumpled and lifeless, just like Athe and Ubel. I survived, I think, only because of my slim build, which allowed me to navigate the narrow passage. Gwit's voice trembled as she recounted the horrors of the vortex. WooGi listened in horror as she described a tank filled with the remains of countless visitors who had vanished in Nede Grove. The realization hit him. This place was a graveyard. "We need to alert the authorities so something can be done to clear up these dead bodies," WooGi said firmly. "But first, I need to get you home." WooGi helped Gwit to their camp, hurriedly packed their essentials, and drove to the airstrip. His grip tightened around the wheel, the burden of the past few days pressing heavily on his heart as he drove them out of the jungle. They boarded the plane back to the city, where Gwit was immediately admitted to the hospital.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Yeah, I shall not want.
The comforting clinical environment felt like a world apart from the chaotic, untamed wilderness they had just left behind. News of their harrowing ordeal spread like wildfire. The hospital room, usually a place for quiet recovery, was soon filled with the buzz of reporters. News agencies flocked to the facility, eager to capture the survivors' first-hand accounts. WooGi and Gwit were inundated with interviews as television cameras flashed and microphones were thrust into their faces, demanding details of their experience, their survival, and the danger they faced. Among the reporters, a journalist from a major television network, CII, asked WooGi, "You've mentioned a camera in your interviews. The footage from it, was it able to provide any insight into what happened?" His thoughts went back to the poles in the cave where he had retrieved the camera. With a heavy heart, WooGi pulled the camera from his bag and handed it to the reporter. "This is all we have left," he said quietly. The reporter's eyes widened as he took the camera, eager to see the contents. The footage, some distorted but useful, was aired later that evening on national television. Arthur's last moments, along with Ubel's, played out on screen for the world to see. The chilling silence and dread of the cave and the final frantic scramble before the vortex swallowed them all. It was a gut-wrenching sequence that left the audience in stunned silence. The story quickly became a sensation. News outlets ran it as a special feature, documenting the Nede Grove expedition and the gruesome discovery that had been made. The families of the lost travelers watched in horror and disbelief, but there was a deep sense of gratitude that the truth had finally come to light. The families who had been waiting for months for any word on their missing loved ones were able to find some relief that the mystery surrounding the Nede Grove was unraveling. Though a bitter pill to swallow, the news brought some sense of closure and peace to these families. The footage further solidified the reality of the dangers in the Nede Grove, a place where explorers went missing without a trace, never to return. In the aftermath of the media frenzy, a formal expedition was organized to recover the remains of those who had been lost in the Nede Grove. The Nede Grove mystery had been solved. The dead were no longer nameless victims. Yet, for WooGi and Gwit, they had come back to life, but the price had been high. The pain of losing their friends, the ones who had dreamed of becoming legends, would never fully fade. It was a cruel irony that Arthur's wish had been granted in such an unfathomable way, but their names would live on in the stories shared by those who had heard of their tragic fate. WooGi noticed in Gwit's eye a mixture of grief and relief. As she reflected back on the journey, she felt a deep gratitude for God's protection. WooGi's warnings, grounded in Arthur's dream, now seemed like divine intervention. Hearing WooGi recount his encounter with the tiger and how scripture had guided him, Gwit felt a notch in her spirit. She began to see God's hand in their survival and resolved to know and trust him more deeply. WooGi too emerged transformed. Grateful for God's unwavering presence and constant guidance, he vowed to live boldly for his faith regardless of the circumstances.
I survived through it all. I survived, I survived.
The dust had barely settled when book publishers began scrambling for the rights to Gwit and WooGi's story. They chose a Christian publisher who worked closely with them to present the tale from a faith-based perspective. The book, Legends of Nede Grove, A Journey of Survival, quickly soared to bestseller status. Yet perhaps the most beautiful part of the story was the marriage between Gwit and WooGi. And now you are hearing it thanks to their 13-year-old son, who read the book and transcribed the synopsis we're sharing with you. As he closed the book and added the final period to his notes, his heart swelled with pride, a smile spreading across his face. My parents are legends, legends of the Nede Grove, he thought. But more than that, their God is truly amazing.
I survived through it all. I survived, I survived. I am thankful for my life, though grieving for my friends. I survived through it.